Once you've logged into SMS, you will be presented with the roles that have been allocated to you. User access in SMS is defined by multiple roles. Depending on your requirements, you'll be allocated roles. You'll see these roles displayed as a number of heads with the role title underneath them. Click on any role to begin. Generally, you will always log in with that role and there will be no need to change. So in this case, we'll log in as teacher. This is the home screen of SMS. You'll see the role that you selected displayed in the top right-hand corner. The main part of the screen is white. You'll see the logo and some links here which I will talk about a little bit later. The main way to navigate SMS is using these two tabs at the side, Search and Favorites. There are other tabs across the top, and there are a number of other icons that you'll see. If you hover your mouse over any of these icons, it will tell you what the function is. You'll probably find you don't use most of them. Over time, you'll use more when you're more experienced using the system. First of all, let's have a look at Search. Click on the Search tab. This panel opens and your cursor will be flashing in the box. To search, you need to type in the name of the transaction that you're looking for. Over time, you'll learn which transactions you need to look at. And we will talk about favorites shortly, and that's where transactions that you use all the time can be added to your favorites. So let's start by looking up the student search. You need to type the name of what the transaction you're looking for, and it will then be displayed in this panel. The more you type, the shorter the list becomes. I'll just demonstrate that again. If I take the word search out, you'll see multiple transactions are offered to you. They all have the word student in the title. So as you type further, the list becomes shorter. Just a point about this too, SMS is very unforgiving when it comes to bad spelling. So if you spell the transaction name incorrectly, you will probably get no options presented to you. So if you're finding that, just check your spelling. Once the transaction you're looking for is displayed, double click. This opens the transaction, it's blank. Now this transaction is just an example. The student search is useful for everybody to use. You may not know the student ID, in which case you may need to search by name. So there are default search fields that come up, including family name, first given name, date of birth, and alternate ID. The alternate ID really relates to perhaps an old ID number. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Most people would search by family name and given name. So into these boxes you would type the name of the student you're looking for. In this case, we will look for a student that I've created in the database. And then we'll retrieve. Now, my test student is called John Test, not surprisingly. The search field has the option of like in the drop down. That's if you are not sure what the student name is, you can also use sounds, which is quite helpful. So for example, if your student is an overseas student and has an unusual name and you're not sure how to spell it, if you use sounds, you'll get options that will present to you when you retrieve. In this case, I've got two options. This is my student, John Test. I can see it's not John Testro. And I can select my student by clicking on his ID, which is a hyperlink underneath it. So this brings up the student contact, the first page of the student details, which contains the student ID. So now I have John Test's student ID, his name, his date of birth, his gender, and so on. And if you have a look in the links to other functions panel down the side here, if I click on student contact, for example, this will take me into the page that would contain his address and phone number. These fields aren't populated for my test student yet, but if it was a real student, I would see his address in the address details. Further down, I would be able to see his phone details. So that's really handy for you if you need to contact your student. You can then go back to the main student page. Just a word about transactions in SMS. They all have this panel down the side, on the left-hand side. Actions to perform is this top section, in which you'll find save, save and clear, delete, other actions that would be required of that type. In this section, links to other functions. These are, if you like, default favorites. So single click access will take you to this student's citizenship and residency details, his educational background, student documents where we can scan and attach documents, and other related transactions. All transactions in SMS have the links to other functions, which is a very useful way to navigate as well. The other thing in this screen is the sections to display. Again, all transactions have that. If you look in the screen, you'll see the transaction is divided by these blue lines with a bold heading, in this case general details, and in sections to display you can click on that section. It's not really necessary in this transaction, but in a long transaction with lots of sections you may wish to jump from one section to another, and you can do that quickly using sections to display. The other basic navigation points that I'd like to demonstrate are the side slider bars. You can slide up and down the transaction, and you'll see in some transactions the similar bar appears across the bottom, so you can slide from side to side. There are also these navigation buttons at the top, and they will take you to different parts. Back to home, for example, you can close the form here, you can clear the form. You can also close the form by clicking on the cross, and you'll see again with your mouse hovered over the cross it tells you that that will close the form.